I'm going to share a perspective with you. One that us in America are probably all familiar with and have probably experienced ourselves, even though we may not have thought of them in these terms. So you get a job to make some money. And it's really great because you start being able to use it to buy some of those things for yourself. But as time goes on and you grow up and start taking on more responsibilities, you also start taking on more expenses. You get a car, and along with that, you have to start making car payments or paying for gas or car insurance. And that bites into the money you can spend for yourself. You move out on your own, and all of a sudden you have to take care of rent every single month, hundreds of dollars. You also have to buy food for yourself if you want to stay alive, so that's some more money away. More and more expenses pile up, and more of that money that was originally for you is now going other places that aren't nearly as fun. And because you're a Christian, you feel obligated to pay tithe because that's just what you're supposed to do. So you reluctantly give an entire 10% of your income to your local church or to some charities. Though, in reality, most months you probably don't actually give 10% because, well, other things get in the way and you'll pay it back eventually anyway, right? Being the responsible person that you are, you also feel obligated to put some money aside for when you retire so that you can, stay alive in your old age. When you finally get that better paying job, you start making a lot more money than you used to. And so you have more freedom, right? Well, kind of. But that new house you bought was pretty expensive, and you're going to be paying payments on that for a long time. And that new car didn't help, and all the other nice things you bought to fill that new house didn't either. As you again feel your personal money wasting away, you immediately start wishing that you had a better job and made more money. And thus, the cycle continues. In short, I have already felt the pull of the so-called American dream on my life, and that pull to always want to have more and better. This I call the perspective of discontentment, because no matter how much you have, you will always want more. While recently studying what the Bible has to say about wealth and possessions for one of our podcast episodes, I saw a recurring theme throughout the Bible, that we as followers of God, as Christians, as people living for an eternal focus, we should be content with what we have. And that completely clashed with the ideas that I had had in my own heart and with the American culture and the culture of many places in the world around me. I read passages like 1 Timothy 6, 7 through 9, which says, "For we have brought nothing into the world, so we cannot take anything out of it either. If we have food and covering, with these we shall be content. But those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a snare, and many foolish and harmful desires which plunge men into ruin and destruction." Going off this verse, I see the necessity that we should be content no matter what, even if all we have is the bare essentials. The verse only mentions food and covering. If we are being sustained physically, and if we are protected from the weather, essentially, we should be content. That is completely against what everyone around us is saying. Even within the church, that goes completely against what everyone around us is saying. Even among Christians. Even Christians will say that if you follow God, He will give you, success. He will give you prosperity. He will give you all that you need. But often when they say that, the all that you need is actually a lot more than you need. This says, if you have what you need and only what you need to stay alive, you should be content. And the thing is, there are several passages where either Jesus or one of the apostles mentions that those needs, the things we actually need, we don't have to worry about because Jesus will already provide for us. I look to, for that, Hebrews 13, 5 through 6 and Matthew 6, 25 through 34. So in other words, we should be content with far less than we generally strive for, and the things that we actually do need are going to be provided for us. So, given that, why are we striving after all these things? Why are we striving after all the unnecessary things and trying to get better jobs to pay off our luxurious lives when we're already living so far above the standards that we should be content with? When I encountered this new biblical perspective on wealth and possessions and on how content we should be, it completely clashed with the perspective of discontentment that I had unwittingly been prescribing to. And so I want to share a new perspective with you, and I want you to compare this with the one at the beginning of the video and with perhaps the perspective you are living your life by. The primary reason you go to work and have a job at all is to provide for the needs of you and your family. You have more than enough money to buy all the food you need, to acquire some sort of shelter, and to have clothing to protect you from the elements. And beyond that, everything else that you made is extra. Already you have acquired all the things necessary for life, and all the other money you make is not seen as a need or as a requirement or as the goal itself, because your goal has already been met. You recognize that everything in your life is not really your own, and ultimately it all comes from God. And so you make sure to give back to God by giving to the church and to those in need. Since the rest of your money is a gift and is extra anyway, you never have a second thought about giving to a charity, and you are always ready to give more when a need arises around you. Finally, you have some extra income that isn't spoken for by anything else. This extra money is not something you need, but it is something that you have been given anyway, and you will appreciate it for what it is and use it to enjoy the aspects of God's creation that you enjoy the most, like biking or videography or traveling. On occasion, you will also give some more of it, not as something you need to give, but as a free will offering, knowing that you have been given much, and so why not give to those who have not been given much? Do you see how much that perspective differs from the first perspective? It's essentially completely backwards, because in the second perspective, all the extra things are things that are done last and focus on last, and they are taken gladly. Whereas in the first perspective, they are the prime goal. They are the thing you want freedom for. You want to engage in those hobbies and things, and you make that your primary goal, but then everything else takes away from that, and you are only angry and annoyed when it does. See how if you had the first perspective, how you would live a very self-centered, greedy, and discontent life, no matter how much you were given. But if you had the second perspective, you would be content almost right off the bat, as long as you had the basic necessities of life. You'd be much more willing to give because you see all your extra money as extra, as a gift, but not as a necessity. When I saw this new perspective, it completely opened my eyes to a new way of viewing the world. One that is far more content and at peace, no matter its circumstances. And I am convinced that this is a much more biblical perspective of wealth and possessions and anything, really. So while the idea of being content with nothing more than food, water, shelter, and clothing is very foreign to our self-serving and materialistic culture, I want to challenge you with it, because I think in the end it is a much more biblical perspective than what we see around us. It's easy to get caught up in this discontentment because you're always wanting more. You're wanting more for less. You're wanting to do less work and get more money and more enjoyment out of it, but that's not how we should be going through life. We should be going through life content with what we have, no matter the circumstances. Trust me, this is a very peaceful and stress-free mentality. And if you go just a couple days trying to be content with all things, you will notice some pretty big differences. I know I have. Hi, this has been Seasoned with Salt, a show where we like our Christians well-flavored. If you'd like to see more, we have videos going live weekly. We also have a podcast that goes live every Thursday morning where we discuss this video and other videos in more depth and also go into discussion on certain topics from wealth and possessions to traditions to mentoring to separation from the world and more as time goes on. So if you'd like to see more, I suggest you check it out. It's pretty chill. Thanks.